It's pretty easy to send those subpoenas. So, I mean, the records are there. Actually, we modeled our record, the subpoena request we did on Congressman John Dingell, Debbie Dingell's late husband. So it's pretty easy to do this. And I think one of the things that certainly I was stressing in my op-ed, too, is our Capitol Police and the D.C. police who were fighting there that day and holding the line were doing so while these members all got to safety. And one of the things that when we met with the senators and explained to them what was really going on the front lines, we said, you know, they did their job so well that some of these members still don't appreciate how violent it was. You know, when you watch that 6-minute video of Officer Fanone getting brutally beaten so that he had a heart attack, that he was tased with, you know, by a Trump supporter. People don't want to hear those things. So there's so many facts like that that just need to get out there. The press needs to get the facts out, but we need to hear from more of these people on the front lines. So I think they just need to start doing this, start sending the subpoenas, start getting the testimony, and getting people up there in front of a committee. I certainly would prefer a bipartisan commission or some kind of even, you know, thing that, you know, where people to work together. And I think those 35 House members that voted for a commission are a good place to start on getting people who are there right now who would work together. But I think there's certainly a lot of, this isn't partisan. The American people need to understand the threat and the danger of QAnon and these conspiracy theories that actually just aren't, I pointed out, it's not just Republicans who believe these, it's independents and even some Democrats who buy into this, and it's creating this danger where we could have violence again.
And Phil Rucker, I mean, to Barbara's point, the family members of Officer Sicknick, who died after the insurrection, have gone into Republican senators' offices and told them the truth, and they still come out against this bipartisan commission to investigate. Let me show you something that happened on my colleague Hallie Jackson's program earlier today from Sandra Garza, the partner of Officer Sicknick.
I don't think any of them really knew the severity of the threat that day. But Donald Trump did, and the people in his administration, I believe, did. And that's why these Republicans don't want it. Some of the Republicans, I don't want to say all, because clearly, you know, for me, this is about the person. This isn't about the party. This is about the person. But they knew, and that's why they don't want this full commission, because it's going to expose a lot of ugliness, and they want to sweep that under the rug. And I'm not going to allow them to do that. I'm going to expose them for what they are.
Don't doubt her commitment, and I don't doubt her ability to do what she just said she is going to do, expose them. I mean, as Barbara, I think, details, and having worked with evidence and records, it is all knowable. It is knowable who paid for the space. It is knowable where the money flowed between the Trump campaign and the people who carried out the insurrection. These things can all be, it is knowable how many times Kevin McCarthy was on the phone with Donald Trump. It is knowable whether or not any House Republicans gave reconnaissance tours, as a Democratic Congresswoman has posited. Do you think we will ever find out all these knowable facts about this unprecedented attack on the U.S. Capitol?
You know, Nicole, I think the country should hope that we will find answers to those questions, because they're really important questions. The country, as January 6th showed, our democracy is incredibly fragile, and it was teetering on the edge, and it is still teetering there, because these conspiracies are still continuing to be spread through millions of Americans. There's the very real threat of continued violence in a future event of this nature, and not asking those questions, not going into the records, not finding the truth makes it so much more dangerous here. The way to fortify this country's democracy is through truth and through fact, and figuring out exactly how this happened and how we as a society can prevent it from happening in the future. And it's such an important discussion we're having here, and frankly, a little surprising that more members of Congress don't see the pursuit of evidence and the pursuit of real, cold, hard truth to be worthwhile.
Barbara Comstock, why are there only two? Why is it just Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger who see this the way you see this?
Well, I think, like I said, 35 of the House members wanted to have an investigation. 7 senators supported it. So I do want to give more credit to all of those folks. But here's the thing. The information is going to come out. As I pointed out, when I worked on the Clinton investigations, we got a lot of stonewalling. We got hundreds, people who took the Fifth or fled the country. But you know what? The truth came out. Now, it dragged out, and it ran into the 2000 election, you may remember, that we worked on, and that George Bush won. I don't think it helped Al Gore that all of these things were dripping out all through an election year. So I think as a Republican, it would be better for Republicans to engage in this truth-telling process, be out there in front, rip the Band-Aid off fast and get the information out, because it's going to come out through books, through media, through documents, as time goes on. And the longer you drag it out, the more it's going to run into the 22 election cycle, the 24. But more importantly for the American people, it keeps that danger alive. I want to differ. One thing with Phil is I don't think our democracy is fragile. I think it's very strong. I think we had, in those 61 cases, we had judges, a lot of conservative judges, who just kicked Trump out of court and kicked him to the curb and said his arguments were ridiculous. You saw people in Georgia stand up, Republicans in Georgia and Arizona. And, Bill Barr and the Deputy Attorney General, those records are coming out that they said no to all of this and said there's no fraud here. So you had a lot of people in a lot of different places. And I think the more subpoenas that we have out there for information, the more you're going to find that a lot of people said no to Donald Trump and stood up and protected this country. And we need to know that, too, because there probably are some unsung heroes, whether they're in the military or in Homeland, people who maybe are career officials who aren't going to go out there in front of the cameras. But we need to know the stress they were put under, and we need to get that story out. But if Republicans don't do it now, it's going to hurt them in a political way, as well as, making this danger go on longer than it should.
I mean, Barbara, I guess just the counter-argument to that is that it isn't over. I mean, Raffensperger may have done heroic things in the context of the count of 2020, but he also facilitated a voter suppression law in that state that would have disempowered him and his office. So I think it's not black and white. And I think the observation that our democracy is imperiled is beyond dispute. I mean, you talked about the truth coming out. The Republicans aren't even for the truth. They purged Liz Cheney for telling the truth from their leadership ranks. I mean, are you really convinced that they're interested in the truth?
Well, listen, I know it's going to take a while. I pointed out Margaret Chase Smith. She came out in 1950. She only had 6 supporters on her Declaration of Conscience going after Joe McCarthy. But 4 years later, there were 67 members of the Senate who voted to censure Joe McCarthy, and then, he was over. Now, I'd like to shorten that timeline. 4 years was longer than it should have been. But I do think in the long run, the American people, the truth comes out, and I think our democracy usually rewards that. So I think a few people with courage, we already have them in the House and the Senate, people who stood up. Margaret Chase Smith only had 6. We at least have 7 in the Senate now. We have 35 in the House. And I think those few people with courage can make a majority of people, particularly as you see, Republicans are now very concerned that Trump's out there endorsing very weak candidates who could lose them seats. Now, I'd prefer to have better candidates, probably that aren't Trump endorsed, that win. But if they lose, that's going to be another way that they learn their lessons. But I do think, sooner rather than later, with the truth coming out, the scales will fall from the eyes the way they did with Joe McCarthy. And this will be, either it's cutting out the cancer or maybe, more optimistically, it's just passing of the political kidney stone that is painful, but we can all survive it. But I do think our democracy was built to last. It's lasted through tougher things than Donald Trump, who's a 2 times impeached, failed guy who couldn't, at 47%, and it's going down every day, is not going to be the future of anything, that will ever get to the White House. Now, if we nominate him, yeah, that's not good because then we lose. But he's not going to be the future of anything. Except
I appreciate
failure.
optimism.
Sore loser. I mean, he's the future of sore losers everywhere can rally around Donald Trump, but sore losers are still losers.